कैसे करते बता दें।
पता है।
Alright, so good evening to all of you. So let us conclude the topic that we have taken up yesterday. Alright. So we have started with the ethical issues in international relations and funding. Fine. So this was the topic that we started yesterday, and I gave you some brief idea about this topic. That in this topic we have to highlight what is this issues all about, and what all issues are there in international relations and the funding matters. So if you see the issue can be easily identified in the context of, let's say, environmental issues. So the ethical environmental issues or environmental issues that pertains to the ethical matters. Fine, that could be one aspect. Second, it could be the issues of terrorism. So terrorism is equally a very serious ethical issue. Alright. Third, that is the issue of human rights protection. So issues of human rights protection, and there the most important glaring example is the protection of refugees. Alright, so that's another ethical issue before all of us. Then the nuclear bombs or the weapons of mass destruction, WMD.
इसमें तो सर हर साल कुछ जुड़ जाता है,
बिल्कुल।
करेंट इसमें तो आता है।
बिल्कुल, इसको हर साल आपको एडिशन जोड़ते रहना होगा। So nuclear bombs and the weapons of mass destruction can another issue. Then foreign intervention in the domestic issues or matters of a sovereign country. So domestic issue, the foreign intervention in domestic matter of sovereign country can also be an ethical issue. Alright. Then the matters from the diffusion of technology or the use of technology, fine, including the GM crops, is another ethical issue. Alright. Then we have IPR matters, intellectual property rights, another ethical issue. Geographical indications or GI tax, another ethical issues. Fine. And stem cell technology, other ethical issues. Use of technology to ascertain the sex of fetus, other technical or ethical issues. Alright. Issue of abortion, the use of technology, other ethical issues. Fine. So you can see that there are a number of ethical issues that can be a part of impacting the international relations directly or indirectly. Okay. So here we have to understand how these all issues can play a role in international relations and as well as on the issues of funding. Now, to start with the environmental issues, yesterday I did mention to all of you that on environmental issues we have to simply understand that if a country is engaged in emission of carbon dioxide and other the gases which can contribute in the rise in the temperature on Earth, causing the global climate change, having its impact on the overall environment, can equally be a very serious environmental issues. This is not the only issue. There can be a number of issues. For example, the exploitation of resources. The exploitation of resources for the purpose of human greed. That can also be an equally environmental ethical issue in our country or across the globe. Fine. Even hunting animals, killing animals, poaching animals, smuggling animals products across the globe is equally an ethical environmental issue. Fine. Hunting of whales by some country like Japan, Norway, Australia is equally an environmental ethical issue. So there are good number of examples for us in environmental ethical issues. Similarly, as far as terrorism is concerned, in terrorism as well we have a lot of ethical issues that have actually come up before us in the recent past. Alright, so as I told you yesterday, that to define terrorism is itself as an ethical issue. How to define terrorism has been a bone of contention among various countries in the world on the UN platform, and that perhaps might have been the reason that why we could not have a very serious effort from the UNO to eradicate the menace of terrorism across the globe. Because there is a difference of opinion on the definition of terrorism. As I told you, someone say that support terrorism or terrorist for someone is a freedom fighter. So by this logic itself, the entire purpose of defining and sorting out this issue of terrorism gets defeated when a country or any group support the terror in the name of fighting for someone's freedom. So exactly that's the reason why terrorism is equally a very high ethical issue across the globe. And it does not end here. It goes beyond here, because once terrorism or terrorist attack happens, it also creates a lot of other ethical issues. Because if a terror attack has happened from the foreign soil, then definitely the state or the government of the foreign soil is equally responsible. Ethically, the government is responsible to either book the perpetrators as per their law, or to hand over the perpetrators to the state where the act of terror has occurred. So in case of India and Pakistan, we have a very good example to understand it. Fine. And top of that, the funding to terrorism is equally a very challenging task, a very conflicting task, a very conflicting issue. So funding of terrorism in any form, directly or indirectly, is equally an ethical issue. So here we have to also deal with this particular issue of terrorism. Then if you go into the human rights protection, now there also we have a problem of ethical issue. A problem of protecting the human rights first or the refugees first. Because the refugees, if they are given a color of religion, if they are given a color of sex, region, religion, caste, creed, color, then of course it is also equally an ethical issue. So the idea is protection of human rights and refugees' interest comes into direct conflict with each other. And you have seen in the case of Rohingyas. We have been observing it in the case of Rohingyas across the globe, including in India's own neighborhood. So how the state of Myanmar has been treating Rohingyas, we all know about it. So definitely somewhere down the line, the state of Myanmar is ethically responsible to act upon the perpetrators of violence who might have been inflicting the violent methods upon the minorities Rohingyas in Myanmar. And the problem does not only end here, but the problem goes further. When the same minorities start migrating, start running away from the territory where they have been facing atrocities from the hands of majority, then again the other states do not give them asylum or any protection. Now, where is the ethical or morality of the state in terms of protecting the human rights? Fine. So here again we see challenges, or rather a set of challenges are there in the ethical dimension on protecting the human rights across the globe. Rohingya is one of the examples. Nuclear bombs and weapons of mass destruction. The nuclear bombs and weapons of mass destruction is equally a grave ethical issue in the international scenario. Now, at one hand, we promote the idea of peace, harmony, tranquility, and disarmament. Disarmament. So, disarmament of the weapons of mass destruction, which also includes nuclear bombs. So, at one hand, we propose, we promote, we acknowledge the importance of the issue of disarmament on various platforms. Even at the UN platform, we have passed several resolutions in favor of disarmament. Yet, we see there is an arms race growing across the globe among the major powers, especially to have more and more possession of either nuclear bombs or any other weapons of mass destruction. Could be biological or chemical bombs as well. So again there is an ethical issue regarding the matters pertaining to nuclear bombs. Should we have nuclear bombs or should we not have nuclear bombs? Should we promote the idea of WMD or should we abolish WMD altogether? Just yesterday only, again, the tension between US and Russia has grown up. And not only US but also Russia has warned US that if you want to revisit the history, so Russia is prepared to create another Cuban missile crisis. So Russia is ready to create another Cuban missile crisis. And if you know about Cuban missile crisis, then you must have a fair idea that what was this crisis which was very, very imminent upon the Americans who were there in America at that point of time. Where a switch or button could have devastated the entire American cities who might have been there on the eastern coast. So the idea is this sort of threat, this sort of warning keeps coming from one major power to another major power, from one country to another country across the globe, and hence this exactly is a huge ethical issue in our international relations. Similarly, if you see foreign intervention in the domestic matters of a sovereign state, it's the biggest ethical issue that has cropped up in the last couple of decades. Biggest issue that has cropped up in last couple of decades, especially. However, this was something which was there right from the beginning. Because the point of the matter says, India would not have been a colony of British Empire if Britishers would have followed the ethical and moral principles in exercising their behavior. If Britishers would have followed their ethical and moral dimensions in exercising their behavior, India and others would not have been a colony of the British Empire. So the idea is, ethical principles have always been compromised by one or the other major powers in different centuries. So definitely there are n number of examples, there are huge examples that is there in the history of the world where the ethical issues have been compromised completely, partially and thoroughly in exercising the international relations. And not only that, even currently the same trend is quite visible in front of all of us. The country which has faced or which has been facing the challenges of lack of development, the challenges of poor infrastructure, poverty, unemployment, these countries are generally the countries which have been victim of the foreign intervention in the past. They have been the victim of the foreign intervention in the past. We take the example of Vietnam. Now what has happened to Vietnam during the Cold War era phase? Vietnam has been transformed into a battleground of the world's major powers. We'll take the example of France, China, or even the USA. So definitely Vietnam is one live example for us. Apart from that, you have a number of examples in the name of, in the garb of war against terror. The US has devastated various economies of the world in the recent past. That start from Afghanistan to Iraq to Syria. So these all countries have been the victim of the American intervention, which is absolutely an ethical issue, which is absolutely an unethical behavior on the part of Americans to intervene into the domestic matter of the sovereign state. Why unethical? Because none of the international law allows America to single-handedly intervene into a domestic matter of any state which might not be acting upon the so-called global ethical guidelines. Had it been done on the basis of the UN Security Council resolution, had it been done on the ambit of the UN laws, international laws, then perhaps the American intervention might have been ethical to the extent of that it is being justified on the ground of protecting the human rights, ground of protecting the rights of the children, widows, women, disabled in a particular part of the world. But since it was a single step taken by America without having the consent or the consensus of the other global community, that still explains the idea of compromising the ethical issues in those cases. Similarly, diffusion of technology and use of technology is equally an ethical issue. Why? Because since technology develops only once you have enough of capital and leisure time. Because technology is a part of a human scientific temper. Technology develops with the human scientific temper when the scientific temper gets that of environment in which the scientific temper tries to excel on finding out some new methods of easing out the human task on the ground, on the earth itself. And it comes only when the two conditions are available. Once you have enough capital to invest, to seek out the basic needs of a human being, and then you have enough leisure time to think. Now, these two very important features, characteristics behind technology is not available in developing and undeveloped countries. Neither developing countries have enough capital, nor they have enough time to think. Because people out there, they keep trying to only eke out their livelihood to survive themselves, to make them survive on this earth. So they cannot discover a lot, they cannot invent a lot. So inventions cannot happen with them if they will keep fighting only for the basic survival needs. So idea is technology develops or has developed in those advanced economies because of these all factors, and these factors have happened in those advanced economies only after exploiting the poor nations of the world, or so-called poor nations of the world. So they have become richer or industrialized only that we have become a market for them. If England has become industrialized or advanced, it is all because that India became a market for them. So our resources were exploited by them, and then finally they became developed. So ethically they are supposed to help us. They are supposed to help us by giving trillions of dollars which they have looted from this country. Alright. And if you have ever heard Shashi Tharoor,
Yes, sir.
he has very nicely mentioned about it, that trillions and trillions of dollars have been looted from India by the British Empire, and they owe to hand over this much of money back to India. So they cannot shut out their entire ethical responsibility. They have been responsible and they were responsible behind India's impoverishment. So with this logic only, we can understand in this argument, the logic only says on the ground of ethical issues. There is no legal, there is no convention, there is no international provisions under which we can compel England to hand over this money to India. The only aspect under which Americans can be, English can be compelled is what is ethical damage, which can guide their behavior in due course of time in coming years. So the idea is diffusion of technology is equally important because they have technology but they do not want to share it with the underdeveloped and developing economies. So they do not want to share. Hence, I discussed with all of you that the Global Climate Fund, GCF, has been created in 2011 to help those countries which are poor in technological development and they have some basic requirements of using the clean fuel technology. So GCF is one of the examples which indicate that somewhere these advanced economies have acknowledged their ethical responsibility to assist the underdeveloped and developing economies of the world. Alright, so this is what actually we have to understand here in this context of diffusion of technology. Similarly, GM crops, IPR, these all are the examples. Genetically modified crops also has an ethical dimension. Dimension. How? So in the name of increasing the production of crops, we might also compromise the ecology, environment, and at times also the human health. Because we do not have the evidence or enough scientific evidences to support our argument that GM crops is always healthier. Alright, so hence it also has an ethical dimension. Similarly, intellectual property rights, IPR. Now, if the inventions will happen only in advanced economies, and because of that, if they are able to create, if they are able to manufacture some life-saving drugs, against the dreaded diseases like cancer, TB, or any other problems, then they are equally, morally, ethically responsible to supply those drugs at an affordable rate. At an affordable rate to the poor countries like India and others. So, in the name of intellectual property rights, they cannot claim or they cannot shut out their entire ethical and moral responsibility. Hence, it is equally incumbent to have the concept of ethical issues or ethicality on the issues of IPR. Geographical indications. Now, since a country does not have resource, since a country does not have awareness, since a country does not have the human resource to patent a product, it does not mean that they have lost their right to protect those products which is specifically found only in those countries across the globe. You must have heard about the issue of basmati rice. Now, basmati rice is a specific product of India and Pakistan. It has been grown traditionally only in India and Pakistan. Now, since they did not have the sense to patent it, it does not mean that Monsanto sitting somewhere in New York or in Philadelphia or maybe in Washington DC has the power to get it patented, and afterwards they will ask India and Pakistan not to grow this basmati rice. How absurd it is. So definitely there is also the element of ethical issue. Every country or every region has a right to use its traditional knowledge. So traditional knowledge cannot be patented by someone else just because someone else has got that particular legal idea and the resource to get it patented easily. So of course that is equally an issue. Stem cell technology. Now stem cell technology, of course, it has both benefits and disadvantages. Benefits in the context of it can regrow many of our cells and organs. It can help those people, those patients who might be facing some degenerative diseases. So there the cell can again be grown artificially with the modification of some genes. But the question lies here that can a man become a god on earth? Can we give this power of manufacturing man to man itself? Can man clone another man? So can the scientists clone another man? And they can produce number of men. So of course in this scenario itself we have to understand that there is some ethical dimension regarding that.
सर जो चाइना में हुआ वो डीएनए में कुछ
हाँ बिल्कुल इशू था वो
ethical सर जैसे आईवीएफ हो गया बाकी सबने कहा है अनएथिकल है बाद में उसको एक्सेप्ट कर लिया हाँ
तो जैसे आईवीएफ हो गया तो आईवीएफ उनके लिए रिक्वायर्ड है जिनके लिए प्रॉब्लम है लेकिन if IVF can be used by everyone because in IVF there is a huge possibility rather huge possibility or complete possibility that you can determine the sex of the fetus. Alright, so by this logic every person who will go for the IVF will have only son child. They will not go for the female child, and that's what is happening. We do not have a law right now, but it's actually an ethical issue right now. It is happening. You conduct a survey and find it out that in India, if there has been hundreds or thousands of cases of IVF per day, how many of them have been the female children? Not a single one.
Bollywood में भी हो रहा है सारे वो
कहीं नहीं हो surrogacy is equally another ethical issue. हाँ तो अब law आया है अब आया है तो commercialization of surrogacy is something prohibited. ठीक है. So idea is you have a lot of examples. Even the IVF is one of the examples which we do not have any control over that, but that's actually an ethical issue. That's actually a big ethical issue because I know. I think dozens of people who might have gone for the IVF and they all have got only son children, not a single daughter. Alright, so the idea is there is always a possibility to change the sex of the fittest. And that's what is happening. That's why even the clinics are earning crores and crores of rupees. That's a huge ethical issue. Okay? So the idea is, this all, equally abortion was also a very significant ethical issue. In case of Israel, or in case of even Ireland, in Ireland abortion is prohibited. In any case. Norway also. Alright. It is completely prohibited. So in the case of those women who might be having some difficulty or might be having some biological, some medical complications, then in that case also abortion is not allowed. Even at the risk of losing the woman. And there has been a case of Indian origin woman who died in Ireland just because of that abortion was not allowed by the Ireland government. So here again, that's equally an ethical issue. So I've given you hundreds, almost at least dozens of examples which actually can give you some sense about what is this ethical issue in international relations. Now let us see how do we deal with it. Because this is the examples to simply give you some understanding about ethical issues in international relations. Let us see how do we deal with it. First of all, you write a point. International morality is essential in exercising a friendly and healthier relationship, a healthy and friendly healthier relationship with other countries, otherwise without morality there will not be any, set trend of dealing with the nations. International morality refers to, next point, international morality refers to morals or codes of conduct, governing relations between the nations. Next point, the origin of ethical issues can be traced from the can be traced from the 17th century when Treaty of Westphalia was signed. Treaty of Westphalia was signed between England and France to exercise their bilateral ties, on the basis of some code of conduct, on the basis of certain code of conduct. At the international level, the bilateral relations between most nations are governed on the policy of promoting one's own national interest, are governed on the policy of promoting one's own national interest without any regard for the interest of other nations, and this causes conflicts and tensions among the nations. Hence, the foreign policy of every nation must be based upon the ethical considerations. For example, India adopted NAM and Panchashil to uphold the values like peace, harmony, common interest, morality, etc. Alright. So ethical issues in international relation can be understood from two perspectives. Alright. One perspective suggests that this should have been, or this should be, a norm to exercise, convention, norm, rule to exercise one's foreign policy, and that is named as idealism. So idealism should be a guiding force behind the formulation of one's foreign policy. And what is idealism? Idealism only indicates towards what ought to be done, what should be done, and what ought to be done. So what ought to be done, that should be the philosophy of idealism. So this is a philosophy of idealism which was given long back by Immanuel Kant. So Immanuel Kant long back, he proposed the philosophy of idealism. And idealism as a philosophy will be the base to conduct a country's foreign relationship. इन्होंने 18th सेंचुरी में कह दिया कि इसका ये बेस होना चाहिए किसी भी कंट्री को अपने फॉरेन रिलेशनशिप को एक्सरसाइज करने के लिए. So to exercise or conduct foreign relationship, idealism should be the base. Idealism should be the base. And what will the idealism? Idealism will always uphold values like peace, harmony, international order, respect to international laws, all right, morality, common interest की बात करेगा ये हमेशा, rationality की बात करेगा हमेशा, ठीक है? अगर इंडिया और पाकिस्तान के बीच में जिस तरह टेंशन है, उसमें अगर आइडियलिज्म को हम यूज करें तो वो कहेगा कि नहीं, हमें वार्ता करनी चाहिए, बात करनी चाहिए, कल्चरल रिलेशंस बना के रखना चाहिए, स्पोर्ट्स बना के रखना चाहिए, ट्रेड बना के रखना चाहिए. तो आइडियलिज्म हमेशा कहेगा कि आप पीसफुल तरीकों को अडॉप्ट कीजिए. यू अडॉप्ट a peaceful way to negotiate with someone. You adopt a peaceful way to negotiate with someone so that someone can also have a confidence in you. So that is the principle of idealism. You add a point here. इसको लिख लीजिए. You write, idealism was proposed by Immanuel Kant to conduct international affairs, Idealism talks about what ought to be done in politics. What ought to be done in politics. It always upholds, idealism always upholds values like peace, international law, common interest, human rationality, and morality. The UN Charter is based upon the principle of idealism. The UN Charter is based upon the principle of idealism. And according to it, all UN members should fulfill obligations such as solving disputes by peaceful means. Solving disputes by peaceful means. Hence, the placement of UN military observer group, the UN military observer group in India and Pakistan, the military UN and observer group in India and Pakistan in the Karachi Agreement of 1948, in the Karachi Agreement of 1948 is an example of the implementation of idealism in resolving Indo-Pak dispute. In resolving the Indo-Pak dispute. So UNMOGIP was placed between India and Pakistan on the border to observe the violation of ceasefires. Violation of ceasefires on both the sides, and it was done by the UNO. Why? Because UNO was influenced by the principle of idealism. Because UN Charter is influenced by the principle of idealism. And UN Charter suggests that all the member nations should adopt the principle of idealism in resolving their bilateral dispute in a peaceful manner. So the idea is this is how idealism exercises its role in international relationship. Fine. The second philosophy or second principle is the principle of realism. So realism or pragmatism. So realism or pragmatism is the second important philosophy to guide the ethical issues on international relations or in international relations. Alright. Realism and pragmatism. It is derived from Machiavelli. So Machiavelli or Hegel. Now the two other scholars, philosophers who projected or who promoted the idea of realism, pragmatism. In other words, your interest is supreme. So Machiavelli said that जो होना है होने दो. It will hardly matter to you. Just safeguard your interest. Khedra holo, keep you. Alright. So this is what we normally say in our Bhojpuri language. Fine. So the idea is you hardly give your damn to others. You simply take your interest into consideration. And your interest should be supreme. So your end is supreme. Means kuch bhi ho. By hook, by crook. By hook or by crook. You achieve your end. And that is the Machiavellian principle of philosophy. So under this philosophy, the importance is given to your end. In that way, it denies the importance to morality. There is no concept of morality. This is a bookish concept according to them. There is no reason to have morality to guide your international relations. They believe that morality has no space in international relations. They believe the state should always try to serve the interest of the people who are in their domain. Because their interest is supreme over the interest of any other state or any other people, a group of people. तो इनका मानना है कि स्टेट वो हर काम करे जो उनके लोगों को फायदा पहुंचाए. So if their people are getting the utmost happiness Be it any way, you just serve their interest. Alright? So that's the Machiavellian principle. Now, in this principle, it follows the doctrine of present data. Doctrine of present data, that is reason of existence. So it follows the doctrine of present data. The reason for its existence implies that the state should follow whatever is good for the state. The government of every state should follow whatever is good for the state. Government should not carry any moral hangover. So, should not carry any moral hangover. Whatever is good for state, the state must follow that. Alright? That is what actually reason data principle suggests. The reason of its existence simply means that your existence itself is very important. And since you are existing, you need to serve your own interest first rather than the interest of the others. So, the European foreign policy was devoid of this philosophy. The European foreign policy was completely based upon the idealism. So, give Pakistan Indus Water Treaty, give Kashmir Article 370. Alright. So it was simply based upon the idealism. Had it been any other person who was following realism, neither Pakistan would have been in existence, nor even Kashmir issue would have been in existence. Alright? So that is the difference between idealism and realism. Fine. So you can write this point. Realism or pragmatism is derived from Machiavellism. Machiavellism is derived from Machiavellism, followed by Hegelism, or Hegel, a German scholar. Hegelism. It believes in the philosophy of realism, believes in the philosophy of serving one's own interest, without any regard for the interest of other nations. Serving one interest without any regard for the interest of other nations. In regard to the interest of other nations, it has given the birth of Realpolitik. Realpolitik, which was exercised by Adolf Hitler. Realpolitik exercised by Adolf Hitler in early 20th century in Germany. So what is Realpolitik? Realpolitik simply says that you have to see your own interest first. You should not carry any notion of any morality, ethicality. So interest is saying that kill someone to kill someone. Interest is saying to ditch someone to ditch someone. So exactly this is how Adolf Hitler adopted his entire foreign policy. So his foreign policy was also completely influenced with the Realpolitik situation. And of course, Hegel was one of the founder of that particular policy in Germany. Fine. So the idea was This is how Realpolitik also came to this. You get next point. Realism denies the importance of morality. Realism denies the importance of morality in politics. It denies the importance of morality in politics. It suggests that the all means are justified. It suggests that the all means are justified to achieve ends. All means are justified to achieve ends. All means are justified to achieve ends. It follows the doctrine of res iteat. It follows the doctrine of res iteat, which means reason of its existence. Reason for its existence. Reason for its existence. It implies the rulers of the government. It implies the rulers or the government should follow whatever is good for the state. Should follow whatever is good for the state, and not only ethical norms. And not only ethical norms. It has led to the rise of Realpolitik. It has led to the rise of Realpolitik. That is the national policy. Realpolitik, that is national policy, where the advancement of national interest, where the advancement of national interest, where the advancement of national interest becomes paramount. Advancement of national interest becomes paramount. Currently, majority of nations have been following Realpolitik. For example, the policy of protectionism. The policy of protectionism adopted by the US recently. That's also an example of Realpolitik. Alright. So in India, if you have to relate it in the context of India, so in India, this particular principle of philosophy has become a dominant feature of India's foreign policy only after the Nehruvian era. So after the Nehruvian era, this started becoming a dominant feature, and currently in the Modi's era, this exactly is the principle. So we are trying to, rather the Indians are trying to serve their interest first, there is no doubt about it. But again, what we have to always keep in mind, that it does not always discount the importance of morality. It says morality should not be your dominant philosophy to guide your foreign policy. But it does not mean that morality should not be carried by a state. So ethical issues need to be protected by the state at the same time, but it should not be the only guiding force of foreign policy. That is the reason why the government has started stopping the entry of Rohingyas and others into the Indian territory. Because had India been guided by this philosophy, then everyone should be invited, come, no problem. But since India has understood that this invitation to these all refugees will have a long-term consequence, so India is trying to now restrict and protect the border. Alright, that is the example of realism or pragmatism. Fine, that is the broader definitions of or classification of ethical issues in international relations. But a person named John Rawls, now John Rawls is very popular in the legal fraternity, in the jurisprudence across the globe for giving theory of social justice. Alright. But at the same time, John Rawls is equally also known for talking about the issues of morality in international politics. So he wrote a book, The Law of Peoples. Now, The Law of Peoples was his book in which he, for the first time, talked about the importance of morality in international politics. Fine. He followed the philosophy of political liberalism, in which ideas like liberty, equality, justice, fraternity, these all were very important ideas. ठीक है, सोशल जस्टिस की उन्होंने बात की, आज़ादी की, लिबर्टी की बात की, इक्वालिटी समानता की बात की, तो इन सारी लिबरल फिलॉसफीज के ऊपर इनका चर्चा रहा, ठीक है. Now what he says very nicely, he says that there are two kinds of states that can be found across the globe. One is liberal states and another is non-liberal states. Now these liberal states, they still follow the philosophy of idealism, whereas the non-liberal states in the world, they follow philosophy of realism more. But it does not mean a country which might be following realism cannot follow idealism, or vice versa. So here the idea is a country, depending upon the situation, can adopt either realism or idealism, and that is the best way to exercise a foreign policy. तो ना ही आप idealism में convert कर लीजिए अपने आप को, ना ही आप realism में convert कर लीजिए अपने आप को. The best way is to always react or respond on these issues or situations depending upon which is most suitable ideology at that point of time. So you can write this point. John Rawls discusses ये क्वेश्चन आ चुका है एथिक्स में 2017 के 2017 मेंस में. दिस क्वेश्चन वाज आस्क्ड to discuss the theory of John Rawls on social justice and how it is relevant in India currently.
Social justice.
Social justice को क्वेश्चन था वो, ठीक है, how it is relevant in India currently, ठीक है. John Rawls पूछा जा चुका है आपसे. So what was read to you? क्या लिखा था? हाँ, John Rawls discusses the morality of international politics. The morality of international politics in his book The Law of Peoples. International politics in his book The Law of Peoples. He proposed a formula. John Rawls proposed a formula for peace and harmony. He proposed a formula for peace and harmony where the countries can be classified as liberal states and non-liberal states. Liberal states and non-liberal states. The liberal states should not insist. The liberal states should not insist that all states should follow insist that all states should follow a full-fledged liberal principles always. Should follow a full-fledged liberal principles always, or liberalism always. Liberalism always. Whereas for the non-liberal states, should adopt some degree of liberalism, in a gradual manner. But if they will not accept, then they are termed as outlaw regimes. They are termed as outlaw regimes, or the boycotted states. John Rawls says that their existence, or the existence of such states, are an unfortunate fact. But the state should not. Intervene there directly, and should avoid ideological crusades. Crusades का मतलब holy war. Crusades का मतलब holy war. हाँ मतलब religion base पे नाम पे, if there is any war against anyone, all right, started long back in 15th century in Europe between Christians and the Muslims, all right. So that's the reason why it has been named as crusade, because crusade has been derived from the word to cruciata. तो cruciata से निकला हुआ word है, ठीक है. तो cruciata से बना crusade. Cruciata का मतलब होता है cross, all right. तो वहां से निकला ये word crusade. Christians ने tribals और इस्लामिक ग्रुप्स को मारना शुरू किया था 14th century, ठीक है. उसी समय से ये वर्ड कॉइन हुआ क्रूसेड, ठीक है. फाइनली फिर उल्टा पड़ गया, ठीक है. ये है हिस्ट्री. तो crusades. So what he said simply that a nation should avoid going for an ideological crusade. So, in the case of American intervention in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, now these all indicate the same sort of philosophy of John Rawls, where he has actually mentioned that a nation should avoid going for ideological crusades like this. All right. he very candidly admitted that such kind of states, if exist, they're actually an unfortunate fact. But it does not mean another state has a right to intervene there. Another state has a right to intervene there. That's what actually he was clearly indicating. I mean, of course, he is a philosopher of the 20th century, so clearly indicating that tomorrow if a country like America will intervene into any other country in the name of religion, in the name of Islamic religion, Islamic terrorism, then definitely it is actually going to lead another round of adversarial crusade. ठीक है, तो यही एग्जैक्टली है। और अभी जो देखेंगे आप जो वीडियो जैसे मोहम्मद वाला जो टेररिस्ट अटैक हुआ है, इट इज आल्सो वन ऑफ द एग्जांपल्स ऑफ द imprint of adversarial crusade, because he has warned the religion of India, people who follow the majority religion of India. So this is what actually is another indication of adversarial crusade. Take the holy war. They say, the terrorists say themselves that they are on the path of holy war. Alright, that's what actually is another indication towards that. But you write the point. Next point. Finally, he says that states have to comply with. He says that the states have to comply with. The states has to comply with the standard norms, that is the code of conduct, to qualify as members of good standing, qualify the members of good standing, in the international political community, For example, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, has kept Pakistan again on grey list. For its failure to stop funding of terror groups. So in nutshell, what was Lord Sahab indicating? He was indicating towards that if the country does not behave on the global code of conduct, then finally the country will be completely boycotted. And exactly in the case of Pakistan, the same thing is happening. So since India has restricted herself up to a greater extent, despite having irregular or several terrorist attacks on the Indian soil that has been launched by the Pakistanis or from the Pakistani soil, so definitely in the backdrop of that only India's stature has increased. India's respect among the international community has increased, and the Pakistan's image or perception has gone at the lowest level. And this is what is indicated from today's newspaper easily. Alright. So of course this terror monitoring groups keeps Pakistan on grey list. What it indicates? It indicates that now Pakistan has lost its credibility, or rather losing its credibility of coming out from this grey list scenario, because the impact of this is going to be on funding. Fine. So at this point, the grey listing means, the grey listing of Pakistan means downgrading of the country, the grey listing of Pakistan means downgrading of the country by multilateral lenders, like IMF, World Bank, ADB, EU, IMF, World Bank, ADB, EU, IMF, World Bank, ADB, EU, and also a reduction in risk rating by Moody's, S&P, and Fitch. Reduction in risk rating by Moody's, S&P, and Fitch.
So reduction, yeah.
रिडक्शन इन रिस्क रेटिंग, ठीक है, मतलब कि रिस्क रेटिंग वहां पे और ज्यादा कम हो गया है, ठीक है, इनफैक्ट ज्यादा बढ़ गया है जाके, हाँ,
रेटिंग कम हो जाना मतलब रिस्क बढ़ जाना।
हाँ, रेटिंग कम रिस्क बढ़ जाना, तो सिंपल सी बात है, ठीक है। तो रिस्क रेटिंग कम हो गया है, रिस्क बढ़ गया है पाकिस्तान के अंदर इन्वेस्टमेंट करने का, ठीक है। सो दिस इज आल्सो इंपैक्टेड द फंडिंग इशू इन पाकिस्तान ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ FATF matter, ठीक है। So today's newspaper can give you some idea about the topic that we deal with today in the class, fine. So that is the issue, fine. The next last point here is another very, you can write another very disturbing ethical issue has cropped up recently regarding the coercive regime change, Coercive regime change means forceful. Coercive means forceful. Coercive means force. So forceful regime change. जबरदस्ती किसी लीडर को हटा दिया. Muammar Gaddafi. All right. So Muammar Gaddafi of Libya was removed. Similarly, the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad. So he has been again forced to be removed. Fine. Similarly, Saddam Hussein of Iraq. So he was also forcefully removed.
सर उसमें भी चल रहा है वेनेजुएला में
Venezuela again Maduro. So again he is equally facing the same sort of problem from America. So he is now being forced to get removed. So this sort of coercive regime change is common now across the globe. So is it good or justified? That's what is the point that you are writing here. So what can you talk about? Coercive regime change is justified or can it be called as an act of imperialism? Is justified and can it be called as an act of imperialism? The UN has mandated sovereign equality of nations. The UN has mandated sovereign equality of nations, which prohibits sovereign equality of nations, वंदना कर लीजिएगा, sovereign equality of nations which prohibits external intervention in the internal affairs of a state. External intervention in the internal affairs of a state. However, the international intervention is equally supported by the UN Security Council, the UN Security Council of the UNO in certain matters of gross violation of basic human rights or genocide. Basic human rights or genocide. For example, the removal of heads of the government in Iraq, Libya, and currently Syria and Venezuela. The UN Charter does not authorize such kind of intervention, yet the powerful states carry genocide, ethnic cleansing without any international morality. Thus, the need of the hour in international relations today is to propagate the philosophy of international morality. Next point, right? As far as the matters of international funding is concerned, it is a latest consciousness which has taken birth because of international morality. because of international morality. So the outcome of imperialism of 19th early 20th century was that the world was divided into two halves between the developed and undeveloped countries. Alright? And when we entered into the era of 1948, we got the, not exactly 48, it was 1940, we got the principle of Atlantic Charter, which talked about the exploitation of imperialist power to the colonies or undeveloped economies or countries. So it recognized this exploitation, it was recognized here, and accordingly it also recommended for the freedom of colonies. Freedom of colonies. And this became a guiding principle to form UNO in 1945. Now when UNO was formed in 1945, it has to take care of the interest of both. So UNO started discussing the debate of distribution of resources started during the platform, because these nations demanded resources on the UN platform, resources from the developed nations. So on this basis, the international monetary agencies World Bank, IMF, etc. Now they all were told to actually distribute the resources among the people, among the countries which do not have much resource. So their interests need to be taken care of. Fine. Here comes the birth of international morality. There is a UN platform, because international morality, these institutions were asked to assist these nations, help in funding the nations which do not have much money at their disposal. Much money at their disposal. And through that, what we see, various forms of funding started happening. One, they started giving grants to the underdeveloped nations or developing nations. Second, they started offering soft loans. Third, they started giving long-term loans for infra development. Fine. Besides, some other countries or some other benevolent countries apart from these countries also started offering schemes like ODA, Official Development Assistance. So ODA, Official Development Assistance, is the biggest assistance given by Japan. biggest official development assistance given by Japan in the form of grant to the poor countries of the world. Find grant to the poor countries of the world. Not only that, besides this, in 1958, the World Council of Churches where this morality was talked about at a high scale. The World Council of Churches, they also started talking about in 1958 that all the rich countries, all these advanced developed countries, they have a moral responsibility, and because of that, at least 1% of their national income, they say, at least 1% of their national income should be given to the poor countries. So 1% of national income should be given to the poor countries, and this exactly was endorsed in 1980s by OECD group of countries. So, Organization of Economic and what is OECD full form? Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. Alright. So OECD countries, they also supported the argument of World Council of Churches, that is 1% national income should be always donated as a grant to the poor countries of the world. Fine. Now these all development happened, and because of these developments only, what do we find? Even UNO in 2000, in the year 2000, UNO